The great hall of the Galactic Confederation was filled with soft music and gentle voices. Representatives from 847 different worlds sat together in perfect harmony. Some looked like tall trees with golden leaves. Others were made of living crystal that sang when they spoke. A few were small creatures with fur that changed colors based on their emotions. Ambassador Hygiene stood at the center podium. Her species, the Vela, had blue skin and silver hair that flowed like water. She smiled as she looked around the peaceful chamber. For 3,000 years, no war had been fought between any member worlds. Violence was something they only read about in old history books. Today we discuss the mining rights dispute between Kepler-7 and New Harmony, Hygiene announced. Her voice was calm and musical. Both worlds claimed the asteroid belt between their systems. An elderly representative from Kepler-7 stood up slowly. His name was Elder Mortage, and his people looked like walking flowers with petals for fingers. We have meditated on this matter for 6 months, he said. We believe sharing the resources equally would bring peace to both worlds. The New Harmony delegate, a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, pulsed with agreement. We accept this wisdom. Let us sign the peace accord and celebrate with poetry. In the back of the chamber, Research Officer Junho took notes on his crystal tablet. He was part of a small team that studied how conflicts were resolved. In his 20 years of work, he had never seen a single case where violence was even suggested as a solution. His people had evolved beyond such primitive behavior. The Confederation's way was simple: talk, meditate, share, and find harmony. If two species disagreed about trade routes, they would discuss it for months until finding a solution that made everyone happy. If there was a territorial dispute, they would bring in wise elders to help both sides see a peaceful path forward. Junho often wondered what their ancestors were like back when species still fought wars. The old records spoke of terrible weapons and battles between worlds. But those days were long gone. Now their military ships were used only for rescue missions and moving supplies between worlds. Admiral Kyungmin commanded one of these peaceful fleets. Her ships were beautiful works of art, painted with murals and filled with gardens. The weapons had been removed centuries ago and replaced with medical facilities and research labs. Her crew spent their days studying stars and helping ships in trouble. That peaceful day ended when the emergency alarm rang through the Confederation Hall for the first time in 300 years. A communication officer named So Young ran into the chamber, her face pale with fear. Ambassador Hygiene, she called out, we have lost contact with the outer colonies. Hygiene looked confused. Lost contact? Check the communication arrays. There must be equipment failure. We did check, So Young replied, her voice shaking. The entire Kepler 442 system has gone silent. No signals, no ships, nothing. The representatives began to whisper among themselves. In a galaxy where every world was connected by instant communication, losing contact with an entire system was impossible. The Confederation's technology was perfect. Nothing ever failed. Over the next few days, more reports came in. Colony after colony went silent. First one system, then 3, then 7. Each time, rescue ships were sent to investigate. None of them ever returned. Elder Morty was the first to speak the frightening truth. Something is hunting us, he whispered during an emergency council meeting. Something that destroys rather than communicates. The word spread like poison through the peaceful galaxy. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Confederation faced an enemy that could not be reasoned with. Admiral Kyungmin received orders that made no sense to her. Prepare for combat. How do we prepare for combat? She asked her officers. Our ships have no weapons. Our crews have never trained for battle. We don't even know what combat looks like. Her question was answered when the enemy finally appeared. The first visual contact came from a deep space monitoring station near the edge of Confederation space. Technician Dahoon was monitoring routine asteroid movements when his sensors detected something massive moving between the stars. The ships were unlike anything in Confederation records. They were black and twisted, looking more like living creatures than manufactured vessels. They moved through space like predators hunting prey, their hulls seeming to breathe and pulse with alien life. Dahoon tried to send the standard peaceful greeting message. The response came in the form of a weapon that turned his monitoring station into dust. Admiral Kyungmin's beautiful fleet arrived 3 days later to find nothing but debris and silence. As her ships moved through the wreckage, the enemy appeared around them like wolves surrounding sheep. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 17 minutes. The peaceful ships had shields designed to protect against space debris, not military weapons. Their communication systems tried desperately to establish contact with the attackers, broadcasting offers of peace and cooperation in every known language. The enemy's only response was destruction. Kyungmin watched her flagship's garden burn as alien weapons tore through the hull. Her crew, trained for rescue and research, could only run and hide as their beautiful ship died around them. In those final moments, she understood that their 3,000 years of peace had not prepared them for this. The Confederation had forgotten how to fight. They had forgotten that sometimes, in a dangerous universe, peace was not enough to survive. As her ship exploded around her, Admiral Kyungmin's last thought was a terrifying realization. They needed to find someone who still remembered how to be monsters. The age of peace was ending, and something far more terrible was about to begin. 6 months had passed since the first attacks. Ambassador Hygiene stood in the deepest part of the Confederation archives, a place most citizens never knew existed. The beautiful crystal walls were covered with warning symbols in every known language. This was where they kept the forbidden knowledge. "Computer, show me all restricted files about dangerous worlds," she said to the ancient AI that guarded the archives. "Access denied. These files are classified as harmful to galactic peace," the AI replied in its gentle voice. Hygiene placed her hand on the emergency authorization scanner. "By order of the Emergency War Council, grant me access to all Death World records." The word, war, made the AI pause for several seconds. It had not processed that concept in over 2,000 years. Finally, the forbidden files appeared on the holographic display. What Hygiene saw made her sick to her stomach. The files showed worlds that should not exist. Planets where the ground itself tried to kill anything that lived on it. Places where massive storms could destroy entire continents. Worlds where volcanic eruptions happened so often that life had to evolve just to survive the constant destruction. But the most disturbing files were about worlds where intelligent species had evolved from predators. These were planets where thinking creatures had gained intelligence not through cooperation and peace, but through learning better ways to hunt and kill. "Show me species that achieved space travel through warfare," she whispered. Only 12 worlds appeared on the screen. Most had destroyed themselves with their own weapons before reaching other stars. 3 had survived but remained isolated in their home systems, too dangerous to contact. 1 species had disappeared into deep space, becoming legends that scared other civilizations. Then she saw Earth. The file made her hands shake as she read it. Earth was a blue planet orbiting a young, unstable star. The world was constantly trying to kill everything on it. Ice ages froze the entire surface every few thousand years. Massive rocks from space regularly crashed into the planet, destroying most life. The continents themselves moved around, creating earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Somehow, intelligent life had not just survived on this nightmare world, it had thrived. The species called themselves humans. They were descended from creatures that hunted other animals for food. Even after becoming intelligent, they continued to fight each other for thousands of years. They had divided their own world into territories and spent centuries learning new ways to kill their own kind. The most terrifying part was how good they had become at it. The files showed weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Humans had learned to split the smallest parts of matter and turn them into bombs. They had created poisons that could kill millions of their own species. They had even turned their own planet's weather into a weapon. Research Officer Junho found Hygiene 3 hours later, still reading the human files with a look of horror on her face. "Ambassador, the Council is waiting for your report," he said softly. "Junho," she said without looking up, "what do you know about apex predators?" "They are creatures that hunt other creatures for food. They exist on primitive worlds where evolution has not yet achieved harmony." Hygiene showed him images from Earth's surface. Massive creatures with giant teeth and claws. Flying hunters that could see for miles. Ocean monsters larger than their spaceships. These humans evolved on a world full of apex predators. But they became the most dangerous predator of all. Junho studied the files with growing amazement. They turned their entire planet into a weapon. "Look at this. They learned to control atomic energy not for peaceful purposes, but to destroy their enemies." "They are exactly what we need," Hygiene said quietly. "And exactly what we should fear." The debate in the Emergency Council lasted for days. Elder Mortiach argued that contacting such a violent species would corrupt their peaceful civilization. "We cannot invite monsters into our galaxy," he pleaded. Ambassador Telka from the Crystal Singers disagreed. "Our peaceful ways have failed us. The enemy destroys our worlds while we try to sing them songs of harmony. Perhaps it is time to learn from those who understand destruction." Captain Min Jae, one of the few surviving military officers, supported the mission. "My fleet was destroyed in minutes because we forgot how to fight. These humans have never forgotten. They might be our only hope. The final vote was close, but fear won over principles. The Confederation authorized a secret expedition to Earth. They would make contact with humanity and ask for help, knowing that once they opened this door, their peaceful galaxy might never be the same again. Hygiene was chosen to lead the mission. As her small, fast ship prepared to jump to hyperspace, she looked back at the beautiful core worlds of the Confederation. Their crystal cities gleamed like jewels among the stars, filled with species that had never known violence or war. "Computer, set course for Sol System," she ordered. "Warning, destination classified as extreme hazard. Species listed as potentially hostile to all known life forms." "I know," Hygiene replied sadly. "That is exactly why we need them." As her ship entered hyperspace, she wondered if she was about to save the galaxy or doom it to an even worse fate. The humans might help them fight the enemy, but who would protect the galaxy from the humans afterward? 3 days later, her ship dropped out of hyperspace near a small blue planet that orbited a yellow star. On the surface of that world lived the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever produced. It was time to wake the monsters. The emergency meeting room deep beneath Seoul was filled with tension. General Kim Tae-ho sat at the head of a long metal table, his scarred face showing no emotion as he studied the impossible images on the screen. Above the Korean peninsula, silver ships hung in the sky like metal tears against the blue morning. "Sir, the alien vessel is requesting permission to land," reported Colonel Park Ji-min, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "They claim to come in peace." Kim laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's what every invasion force in history has claimed. What do our weapon systems show?" "Their ships have no visible weapons, sir. In fact, they seem designed more for beauty than war. The hulls are covered in artistic patterns and what appears to be gardens." This gave Kim pause. In his 30 years of military service, he had never encountered an enemy that decorated their warships with flowers. 3 hours later, Ambassador Hygiene materialized in the secure underground facility. Her blue skin and flowing silver hair made the human soldiers step backward in surprise. Through her translation device, she spoke in careful, formal words. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Hygiene of the Galactic Confederation. We come seeking your aid in a matter of galactic importance." General Kim studied her for a long moment. "And why should Earth care about the problems of aliens we just met 5 minutes ago?" Hygiene activated a holographic projector, showing images of consumed worlds. "Because our enemy will not stop with our worlds. They consume everything in their path. Your world will be next." The images were horrifying. Entire planets stripped bare, their surfaces turned to ash and dust. Cities that had stood for thousands of years reduced to empty craters. The general's expression remained unchanged, but Colonel Park could not hide his shock. "What kind of enemy are you facing?" Kim asked. "They are called the Devourers. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They exist only to consume and destroy. Our peaceful methods are useless against them." Kim leaned back in his chair. "So you want us to fight your war for you?" "We want you to teach us how to fight," Hygiene corrected. "Your species is the only one we have found that understands warfare as more than a theoretical concept." The room fell silent. Finally, Kim spoke again. "What makes you think we're any different from your peaceful confederation?" Hygiene's translation device struggled with her next words. "Because your entire planet is a weapon. Because you have spent thousands of years learning to kill your own kind more efficiently. Because you are what our enemy is, but with intelligence and choice." The insult was clear, but before Kim could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the facility. A junior officer burst into the room, his face pale with terror. "General, Deep Space Monitoring has detected massive objects approaching from beyond Neptune. They're decelerating from near light speed." Kim was on his feet instantly. "How many?" 17 vessels, sir. Each one larger than our biggest aircraft carrier." Hygiene's face went white. "They found us. The Devourers have found Earth." What followed was 72 hours that changed everything. Captain Lee Han-sol commanded the destroyer Seoul's Pride, part of Earth's orbital defense fleet. As the alien monsters emerged from the darkness between Mars and Jupiter, his crew stared at sensors showing vessels the size of cities. "All ships, this is Admiral Song Mi-young," crackled over the communication system. "We are humanity's first line of defense. We will not yield." The Devourer ships looked like living nightmares, black and twisted, their hulls pulsing with organic movements. They made no attempt to communicate, no demand for surrender. They simply began their attack. The first salvo of alien weapons turned two human destroyers into expanding clouds of debris. But unlike the peaceful Confederation fleets, the humans did not retreat. They did not try to negotiate. They fought back with a ferocity that shocked their alien observers. Captain Lee watched his ammunition counter drop toward zero. Weapons officer, load everything we have left into the forward tubes. Navigation, set ramming course for the lead enemy vessel. Sir, that's a suicide run, his weapons officer, Lieutenant Choi In-ho, reported. I know, Lee replied calmly. Transmit our tactical data to the second wave. Make our deaths count for something. The Soul's Pride accelerated directly toward the massive Devourer ship. As it struck the alien hull, the explosion lit up space like a small sun. The enemy vessel, damaged but not destroyed, found itself facing three more human ships following the same suicidal tactic. Admiral Song watched the battle from her command ship, Incheon. Half her fleet was gone, but for the first time in the war, a Devourer force was taking real damage. Her ships fought with tactics the aliens had never encountered: ramming attacks, coordinated sacrifices, using damaged vessels as shields for undamaged ones. Admiral, reported her communications officer, the enemy fleet is withdrawing. Song could barely believe it. The Devourers, who had never retreated from any battle, were pulling back from Earth's orbital defense. Ambassador Hygiene stood in the wreckage of Luna Base, watching human rescue teams pull survivors from the debris. Men and women risked their lives to save both humans and aliens without hesitation. The same species that had just demonstrated their capacity for organized destruction was now showing equal capacity for selfless heroism. Your people fight like monsters, she said to Admiral Song, whose uniform was torn and bloodied from the battle. Song looked up from the casualty reports she was reading. That's what you need, isn't it? Monsters who can choose when to be human. The alliance was formed that day, not through treaties or negotiations, but through shared blood and sacrifice. Earth had proven they could do what the peaceful galaxy could not: they could match the enemy's violence and exceed it. But as the human survivors counted their dead and prepared for a larger war, none of them realized they had just crossed a line they could never uncross. They had become exactly what the universe needed them to be. The monsters were awake and they were willing to fight. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Dae stood on the bridge of the Confederation flagship Harmony's Voice, watching the alien crew struggle with concepts that seemed simple to her. The ship's beautiful crystal walls were now covered with tactical displays showing fleet movements and casualty projections. Communications Officer Telka, she said to the gentle Seraphim at the console, transmit the attack order to Beta Squadron. Telka's crystalline wings trembled as she read the message. Colonel, this order will send 300 beings to their deaths. Surely there must be another way? Dahee's voice remained calm and patient. Those 300 deaths will save 3,000 lives on the colony world below. In war we must choose the lesser evil. The alien crew watched in horror as Telka transmitted the order with tears flowing down her crystal face. To them, every individual life was precious beyond measure. The human concept of acceptable losses was like asking them to cut off their own limbs. Commander Kang Bo-young led the first integrated human-alien strike force toward a massive Devourer hive cluster. Her mixed crew of humans and aliens worked side by side, but their reactions to combat orders showed how different they truly were. Raptor Wing, you're going on a one-way mission, she announced over the communication system. Your job is to breach their outer defenses. You won't be coming back. The human pilots responded immediately. Copy that, Control. We'll clear the path. Tell our families we held the line. But the alien pilots began to panic. Commander, there must be another way. We cannot ask these beings to sacrifice themselves. Kang turned to face her mixed crew. This is how humans fight wars. We calculate what needs to be done and we do it. The alternative is losing everything. Squadron leader Choi Min-woo led 12 fighters directly into the heart of the Devourer formation. His wing knew they were going to die, but they flew their mission with perfect precision. As his ship exploded against the enemy's shield generators, he transmitted final tactical data to the main fleet. The breach worked exactly as planned. The main battle group poured through the gap, destroying the Devourer hive in under 2 hours. But the cost horrified their alien allies. Admiral Song Mi-young found herself teaching concepts that had never existed in the peaceful galaxy. She stood before a room full of alien commanders, trying to explain human military thinking. War is not about preserving individual lives, she said, watching them flinch at her words. War is about preserving what those lives protect. Sometimes we must sacrifice the few to save the many. Captain Yim Jae-ha, one of her most experienced officers, added practical examples. When the enemy expects us to retreat, we attack. When they expect mercy, we show none. When they think we will preserve our forces, we spend them like currency to buy victory. The transformation of the Confederation military was brutal but effective. Human advisors taught tactics that seemed impossible to the peaceful species. They learned to use false retreats to lure enemies into traps. They practiced flanking maneuvers that required some ships to die drawing enemy fire. Most shocking of all, they learned psychological warfare, how to break enemy morale before the battle even began. Lieutenant Na Sujin worked with alien engineers to modify their beautiful ships into weapons of war. Remove the gardens and art galleries, she ordered. Install armor plating and additional weapon systems. The aliens wept as they tore apart their masterpieces. Ships that had been floating palaces became efficient killing machines. The Harmony's voice was renamed Soul's Vengeance, its crystal walls replaced with battle-scarred metal. The war began to turn in their favor, but at a terrible cost to alien psychology. Commander Park Sung-ho watched a young Vorthan officer break down completely after his first successful battle. "We destroyed them all," the alien whispered, staring at his hands. "We killed thousands of beings. How do humans sleep at night knowing they have taken so many lives?" Park's answer was simple and terrifying. "We sleep well because we know what we're protecting. The enemy would have killed millions if we had let them live." The Devourers, who had easily conquered peaceful civilizations for months, found themselves facing something they had never encountered. Human-led forces fought like the Devourers themselves, without mercy, without hesitation, and with a willingness to sacrifice anything for victory. Captain Han Min-young commanded a human dreadnought during the Battle of Kepler Prime. When surrounded by superior enemy forces, she made a decision that saved the colony world but horrified her alien observers. "All ships, this is Incheon," she transmitted. "We're going to ram the enemy flagship. All other vessels, use our explosion as cover for your attack run." Her ship, carrying 800 crew members, accelerated directly toward the massive Devourer command vessel. The explosion destroyed both ships but allowed the remaining fleet to break through enemy lines and save 2 million colonists. The aliens could not understand how humans could make such calculations so easily. To them, losing 800 lives to save 2 million should have been impossible to contemplate. But humans did the math and made the choice without hesitation. As the months passed, human tactics became more sophisticated and more terrifying. They created weapons designed not just to destroy enemy ships, but to broadcast the destruction across Devourer communication networks. They used captured enemy technology to turn the Devourer's own weapons against them. They learned to fight like monsters who chose when to be human. The peaceful galaxy was winning its war, but the victory belonged entirely to humanity. The species that had spent 3,000 years learning to resolve conflicts through meditation and poetry now watched humans resolve conflicts with precision violence and calculated cruelty. The monsters were doing exactly what they had been asked to do, and the universe would never be the same again. The war ended not with celebration but with silence. Captain Han Min-young stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Incheon as the last Devourer hive burned in the depths of space. Around her, the mixed human and alien crew watched the enemy stronghold collapse into itself, creating a brief new star before fading to darkness. "All Devourer signals have ceased," reported Lieutenant Na Sujin at the tactical station. "Long-range sensors show no remaining enemy activity in any sector." The communication channels filled with voices from across the galaxy. Every species in the Confederation was transmitting messages of gratitude and relief. But Min-young noticed something troubling in their voices. The thanks were mixed with fear. On the bridge of Harmony's voice, Ambassador Hygiene watched the victory celebration broadcasts from the core worlds. The peaceful species were dancing in their crystal cities, singing songs of joy and relief. But she could see the questions in their eyes, the worry about what came next. "The enemy is defeated," she said to the human advisor standing beside her, Colonel Yoon Dae. "Your people have saved us all." "Yes," Dae replied simply. "And now you're afraid of us." It was true and both of them knew it. The humans had proven themselves capable of calculations that chilled the alien mind. They spoke casually about acceptable losses and strategic sacrifices. They had turned the art of war into a precise science, measuring lives against objectives with cold efficiency. The uncomfortable questions began immediately after the victory celebrations ended. Elder Mortiach of the Flower People called for an emergency council session. His petition was supported by dozens of other species. "The humans have served their purpose," he argued before the assembled delegates. "But now we must ask, what do we do with warriors in a time of peace?" The debates raged for weeks. Some species wanted humanity quarantined to their home system, contained like a dangerous weapon that might accidentally go off. Others argued for permanent human military presence throughout the galaxy, turning them into a professional soldier class that would handle all future conflicts. The Crystal Singers proposed a middle path: integration and education, slowly teaching humans to embrace peaceful ways while learning from their strategic thinking. But even they seemed uncomfortable with the idea of humans living among them permanently. General Kim Tae-ho attended one of these debates as an observer. He listened to aliens discuss his species like they were discussing a dangerous animal that needed to be managed. When asked for his opinion, his answer was simple and direct. "You called us monsters when you needed monsters," he said. "Now you want us to become something else because it makes you comfortable. But you can't have it both ways." The solution came from an unexpected source. Captain Lee Han-sol, one of the few survivors from the first battle at Earth, proposed the creation of the Terran Defense Corps. It would be an all-volunteer force of humans who would remain in deep space, stationed at monitoring posts beyond the galaxy's edge. "We know what we are now," he explained to the Confederation Council. "We're the species that can do what others cannot. Let us stand guard where others fear to go." Admiral Song Mi-young supported the proposal. "The galaxy needs protectors who are willing to make hard choices. We'll watch the dark between the stars so you can keep your beautiful worlds and peaceful ways." The vote was unanimous, but not because everyone loved the idea. They agreed because they were afraid to say no. 6 months later, Colonel Kim De-young stood on the bridge of Deep Station Omega, the first of many human outposts established in the void between galaxies. Her crew was entirely human volunteers who had chosen to leave the civilized worlds behind and stand guard in the endless darkness. "Final supply ship is departing," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Park Jun-seo. "We're officially on our own out here." Through the station's massive viewing windows, Kim could see the distant glow of the galaxy they were protecting. Those beautiful core worlds with their crystal cities and flower gardens, where species that had forgotten how to fight could continue their peaceful existence. "Any regrets about volunteering for this assignment?" she asked her crew. The answers came without hesitation. They had seen what they were capable of during the war. They had learned to calculate the value of lives and spend them like currency. They had discovered that they could sleep soundly after making decisions that would haunt their alien allies for generations. "This is where we belong," said Lieutenant Choi Sung-ho, the station's tactical officer. "Out here in the dark, where monsters are needed." Kim composed her final report to Earth and the Confederation Council. Her words would be transmitted across the galaxy, heard by trillions of beings who would sleep safely because of what humans were willing to become. "This is Deep Station Omega to all receiving stations. The Terran Defense Corps has assumed position at the galaxy's edge. We stand ready to face whatever comes from the dark between stars." She paused, looking out at the endless void where new threats might someday emerge. "The universe needed monsters to fight their wars, and they found us. Now we choose to remain what you needed us to become. When the next enemy comes, and there will always be a next enemy, you won't have to search for warriors. We'll already be waiting in the dark." In the beautiful core worlds, the peaceful species returned to their poetry and philosophy and gentle ways of resolving conflicts. They spoke of the war as a temporary madness, something to be forgotten as quickly as possible. But in the cold depths of space, human ships patrolled in silence. Their crews were armed with weapons that could crack planets and trained to use them without hesitation. They were the galaxy's gift to itself, monsters who chose to stand guard in the darkness, forever changed by the war that revealed their true nature. The universe was safe, not because it had learned to defend itself, but because it had found guardians willing to do what others could not. The price of peace was eternal vigilance, and humans had volunteered to pay it.